You sit down to code, and 2 hours later you've written 4 lines of actual logic. But you answered 11 Slack messages, read 2 design docs, and somehow ended up in a GitHub thread from 2019. That's shallow work, dressed up as productivity. It feels like effort, but the output is thin. Deep work is different. It's the kind of focused, uninterrupted attention that produces real progress, the feature that finally clicks, the refactor that untangles the whole module, the insight that saves weeks. I've spent years trialing systems to protect that state. Most were over-engineered. The one I'll share here is deliberately simple, a lightweight framework I've used for my hardest coding problems. This isn't the only way to do deep work. It's just what I do, and it might be a useful starting point for you. Define what deep work actually means for a developer. Most definitions of deep work sound abstract, so I got specific. For me, deep work as a developer means I'm building a mental model of a system, writing or refactoring code that requires holding multiple constraints in my head, or solving a problem where the solution isn't obvious and can't be Googled. That's it. If a task doesn't demand that level of focus, if I could do it while half listening to a meeting, it probably isn't deep. Code reviews, responding to comments, updating dependencies, even writing documentation. Those can be important, but they're shallow. The first actionable step is to make your own list. On a plain text file, write down the types of work that feel genuinely hard and meaningful. Then, on a second list, write the shallow tasks that often masquerade as work. Keep both visible. This separation changes your relationship with your time. You stop treating all tasks as equal and start protecting the hours that actually move your project forward. Protect time before you protect anything else. A deep work session doesn't happen by accident. It gets crowded out. I used to hope I'd find a quiet window, so after lunch I'd open my editor, and within 10 minutes, a meeting reminder would pop up, or someone would tap my shoulder. The window never came. Now I block it first. Every morning, I look at my calendar and carve out a 2-hour slot, usually 9 to 11 a.m., before the team's rhythm gathers speed. I label it exactly. Deep work, no interruptions. I treat it like a meeting with the most important stakeholder, the project I'm building. Here's the concrete ritual I follow. The night before, I close every browser tab that isn't related to the deep task. I set my Slack status to focused back at 11 Salau. I put my phone in another room. When the block starts, I don't negotiate. I don't check messages, just in case. I sit down and I begin. This boundary setting is uncomfortable at first. It felt rude, but I learned that protecting 2 hours of flow delivers more value than being constantly available for 8. And most teams respect it once you explain why you're doing it. Not because you're avoiding them, but because you're trying to do your best work for them. Engineer your environment for one thing only: focus. I used to underestimate environment. I'd work in the same space where I scrolled, read it, answered email, and watched tutorials. My brain learned that this place was for reacting, not for building, so I made a clean separation. Physically, I used the same desk, but I changed the signal. A lamp I only turn on during deep work, a specific playlist of ambient ocean recordings, and a simple notebook for handwritten scratch notes. The notebook is key. It keeps me from ever opening Notion or a new browser tab just to jot down a thought. Digitally, I use a separate Chrome profile for deep work. No bookmarks bar, no extensions except a dark new tab page. I log out of social accounts. The only tabs allowed are my code base and the documentation I've pre-selected. Inside VS Code, I run a minimal setup. No sidebar, no minimap, no inline suggestions that break my line of thought. I disable all notifications, system, Slack, email, everything. I even turn off the clock. This might sound extreme, but consider the cost. A single Slack notification can fracture your attention. Studies show it takes up to 23 minutes to regain deep focus after an interruption. My goal is 0 interruptions during the block, and this environment is the container that makes that possible. Run the session like a craftsman, not a machine. With the time protected and the environment set, the session itself needs a small structure, not a rigid system, just enough scaffolding to guide the mind. Here's what a typical deep work session looks like for me. First, I write one intention line at the top of my notebook. Not a huge to-do. Something like implement user role validation or debug the race condition in the cache layer. This becomes my anchor. Then I set a timer for 50 minutes. Not a Pomodoro with forced breaks, just a single, long, uninterrupted block. I start the timer, and I write code. If I feel resistance, I use the 5-minute rule. I tell myself I only have to work for 5 minutes. After that, I can stop if I want. I almost never stop when a distraction pops into my head. I should check that API doc, or did I reply to the team? I jot it down on a dedicated distraction capture list at the bottom of the notebook page. Writing it down tells my brain it's safe to forget. I'll handle it after the block. I don't check my phone. I don't open the browser. I stay in the problem. When the timer ends, I take a real break, 10 minutes away from any screen. I walk, stretch, or look out the window. Then, if I have more energy, I do a second 50-minute block. Rarely more than 2 in a day. Depth is demanding. The final, and perhaps most underrated part of the session. After the block, I write a single sentence of what I accomplished. Not a summary, just a note to myself. Finish the middleware skeleton. Still need to test edge cases. This tiny reflection closes the loop and builds a quiet confidence that accumulates over weeks. Here's the one thing I hope you take away. Deep work isn't a productivity hack you install once. It's a practice, a daily negotiation with your own attention. The system I've described, defining your deep tasks, blocking time, shaping your environment, and structuring the session, only works if you keep showing up. Some days you'll fail. You'll open Twitter in the middle of a block. That's not a failure of the system. It's just being human. The practice is to notice it and return to the intention. Start small. One 50-minute block tomorrow morning. Protect it fiercely. Notice how it feels. Then do it again. In a week, you'll have written more meaningful code than in the previous month. Not because you worked more hours, but because you worked with your whole attention. If this approach was useful, consider subscribing to the channel. We release new videos weekly on building software with a calm, deliberate mindset. Thanks for watching. Go build something calmly.